Whether you're dating, married, or in a committed relationship, understanding the strengths and weaknesses of your relationship can help you strategize and figure out how to build a relationship you've longed for. This is where the Relate Relationships Assessment comes in. It's the most comprehensive relationship assessment in the world. It's research based on the major predictors of marital stability, and it's recommended by the American Association for Marriage and Family Therapists. Also, it's the one that my husband and I used when we were in premarital couples counseling. So for 20% off the assessment, go to relateinstitute.com and enter Polinsky 20. Again, that's relateinstitute.com and enter the promo code Polinsky 20 to get 20% off. Welcome to the Communicate and Connect podcast for military relationships with your host, Elizabeth Polinsky, a military marriage counselor. If this is your first time listening to the Communicate and Connect podcast, please take a second to go rate, review, and subscribe to make sure you get all our future episodes. We also really want to know what it is you love about our podcast, and if for some reason you're not loving it, we want to know that too, because we're committed to providing the best quality content to help you improve your relationships. You're listening to episode 13 on how a dual military couple overcame relationship challenges. Show notes can be found at www.elizabethpolinsky.lcsw.com. All right, so I'm Elizabeth Polinsky with the Communicate and Connect podcast, and I'm really excited because today I have Alyssa here who is going to tell us a little bit about her experiences being a military spouse and also being in the military herself. So Alyssa, do you want to just introduce yourself a little bit for us?
Hi, I'm Alyssa. I've been in the military for 3 years now. I met my husband in the military. We are stationed in Norfolk. He's currently on deployment right now. Should be coming home
that's hard.
shortly. We have 2 daughters. Our oldest is 2, and our youngest is 10 months.
Wow. So not only do you guys you're both in the military, which is, I think, pretty stressful, which we can get into that in a second, but he's also deployed and you have 2 kids. You guys have a lot of different little stressors going on.
It's a lot.
Yeah, I believe that. I think, for so many couples, just military life, even if you're both in the same spot, you don't have your partner deployed is rough sometimes. And then if your partner is deployed, that can be rough. And now you've got some young kids on top of that. So you're like super mom right now. Super military mom. Yeah. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your love story? Just because I love love stories, and I think other people love love stories too.
Of course. So I went to boot camp in January of 2017, graduated March 10th, 2017, and I actually met my husband that day, but we didn't know at the point that we would be here. We actually stopped talking. We actually didn't talk at all after that day. And I kind of lived my best life in A school and did my own thing. Because at the time, I was only an E1 and he was an E4 at the time. And we kind of just stayed our own way. He didn't know at the time that I was like obsessed with him in a way.
Yeah.
And from there.
So can I ask a quick question? Yeah. So just because I know what you're talking about, but I realize that maybe some of the people in our audience may not understand like that difference between your rank and why that was important, and why you lived your best life on your own and didn't think that was really a possibility. Do you mind explaining a little bit more about that?
So our rule in boot camp was you can't date 2 over and you can't date 2 under. What I didn't understand was they were talking about E5 and above, they aren't junior sailors anymore. E5 and above.
Okay.
So it's kind of a fraternization thing. Like, officers can't date enlisted,
Mm-hmm.
and senior sailors, like a senior chief, can't date an E1, a fresh person right into the Navy, because
Yeah.
it's kind of looked down upon. I mean, you can do it, but it's very frowned upon.
Kind of like dating your boss in the
Yeah,
civilian world.
that's exactly
If
what it is.
yeah.
A CEO won't go after someone fresh on the job.
Yeah, and it would look odd,
Yeah.
maybe, and coworkers would feel like they're not fair treatment or
Yeah,
things
it's a
like that.
very much
Okay.
a favoritism thing.
So you were worried that he was too high up for you to date in sort of a socially appropriate way.
Yeah, because at the time he was my yeoman, which is he was just someone that was put in charge of me. So like if I get in trouble, it comes down on him,
Okay.
which will go up to the higher ups, and they'll go to him and be like, why is this happening? So I stayed to myself. He ended up leaving the barracks, which we were both staying at the time, and to go back to school so he could leave Great Lakes and go to a different school before heading to the fleet. And I saw that as my moment to just swoop in. One of my roommates had gone downstairs and was like, "Hey, you need to talk to this girl. She's like obsessed with you, has all these feelings, talks about you all the time." And he's like, "That's weird. I'm not doing that." And I added him on Facebook and was like, "Hey," and that's what started it all.
He was kind of nervous to make the first move.
Yeah, he's very, very shy and nerdy. So he was like, I don't know how I feel about this. And he ended up messaging back. We went on like a zillion dates before he left and spent just about every single day together. And then he headed over to Doggern, which is about 3 hours north of Norfolk. And I was still stuck in Great Lakes waiting for orders. About 2 weeks passed, and they were like, "Hey, if you could get stationed anywhere, where would you want to go?" And I pretty much told them, I was like, "Anywhere. You could send me to Norfolk if you wanted to." And to fresh people in the Navy, Norfolk is not really where you want to be stationed at, because it's not a bad place. It's just not the best place to get your start at in the Navy.
Okay. I'm imagining that also depends on your job.
Yeah, on your job. We have a lot of broken ships over here in Norfolk.
Gotcha. Yeah,
Yeah,
I've heard some stories.
so you're either going on lots of deployments or you're not going at all. I don't care. Send me to Norfolk. And they're like, "Okay, well, good thing that's where you're going." And I was like, great. So I went home for about a week or so after leaving Great Lakes, and my husband, boyfriend at the time, picked me up in Norfolk, and we spent as much time as we could together before I ended up going to Israel to meet my ship for deployment.
So you were deployed while you guys were dating?
Yes.
Okay. Was that challenging? I'm imagining that would be challenging.
It was very challenging because at the time, he was going to school at nighttime, and I was 7 hours ahead of him in time.
So not a great time to sort of catch up and do phone calls or
It was very difficult. And then our relationship hit a weird patch. When we were leaving Israel, I took a pregnancy test because I wasn't feeling right, and I, at the time, hadn't had a period in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't feel right. So I went to medical.
Yeah.
They're like, we'll take a test for you. We'll do it for you. And I was like, okay, cool. So I took it, and we looked at the test maybe 30 seconds, and I was like, oh, it's negative. I'm fine. It's just stress. And then I go to Indoc, and not even 20 minutes later, I get a call to come back into medical. So I was like, oh, they're probably just wanting to do like a consultation, make sure they have it all documented.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is fine. So I go in there. We have Baby Doc, who is like the newest doctor or corpsman that we have on the ship. We call him Baby Doc. And then we had another HM in there. And then we had Doc, who is the head corpsman.
Okay.
Those two were sitting over there just looking at me all like wide-eyed and stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. And then Doc was sitting by the computer. I walk over to him and I'm like, hey, what's up? He's like, oh, heard you took a pregnancy test. I was like, yeah, it was negative. He slides it over and he's like, you want to look again? I was 3 weeks pregnant.
Wow. Okay. What a shocker. I cannot even imagine taking a pregnancy test, having it go negative, and then all of a sudden someone telling me, psych, it's positive.
It was a major shock.
Yeah.
We had just left Israel. We were on our way to transit to France at the time. And Doc was like, hey, just so you know, you can't be pregnant on deployment. It's like, yeah, I get that. He's like, we don't know when we're gonna get you on a plane to take you home, but we'll figure it out. I'm like, okay. So, I hung out in France when we went. They had this big festival, lots of really cool things. So I was like, okay, this is cool. And then from there, we transited to Spain, Rota, which is one of our ports. We have a Navy base there. And they're like, this is where we're taking you off. We're gonna drive you up to Montreal, and you're gonna fly from there home. So I was like, okay, cool. So we drove to Montreal, got on a plane, took that plane to Miami. Worst flight ever. The flight to Israel was so much easier.
Yeah. I believe that.
This flight to Miami, it was long. It was uncomfortable.
Yeah, so here you were. You had gone on deployment. You were away from your partner, which is hard. And especially when you kind of, you went there, it sounded like, to be with him, to be closer to him. And then while you're on deployment, which is kind of like a big deal for your career in the military, you find out you're pregnant. You have to leave deployment early. And now you're headed home. Does he know that you're pregnant yet?
Oh, I had completely forgot how I told him. So I found out, and they gave me permission to use the ship's phone, the outline, to call home. So I call him. Granted, remember, he's on nights for school, so during the time he's asleep. So I called him. It was like, I want to say like 3 in the afternoon, maybe earlier. And I was like, hey, in the ship's phone, when you call out, it gives like this random number sometimes. So it was like 00-1-5.
Okay.
And he answered, and he's like, who is this? I was like, hey, it's me. And he was like, oh, hey, what's up? Still groggy and everything else. And I was like, just so you know, I'm heading home soon. He's like, what? Why? And I was like, I'm pregnant. And the second I said it, the ship's phone died.
Oh no, that's like horrible.
And we went into River City. River City is like full lockdown of like all internet, out calls, everything.
Oh my gosh, I cannot even imagine. So here you're finally like, hey honey, I'm pregnant. And then the phone call drops and you have no idea how he's going to respond.
Yes. And at the time, we'd only been dating about a month and a half. We started dating beginning of June. So this is about mid-August at this time. So that's how long we had been dating.
Okay.
At the time.
You had known each other longer. That was like the official dating type of thing.
we had finally exited River City, and I get on Facebook and I'm like, hey.
Yeah, I need your reaction.
And he's like, I had a crazy dream a couple days ago. And I was like, oh, that's cool. What happened? He's like, you told me you were pregnant. And I was like, oh, about that. I should be home here soon because I am pregnant. And he's like, what? So he's freaking out. We told our parents. We're all freaking out, and my mom was like, look, she's like, I had told you about birth control. You knew all this other stuff. She's like, you can't get mad about it. She's like, there's nothing you can really do. She's like, are you going to keep the baby? And I said, yeah, of course. And she was like, okay then. She's like, y'all figure it out.
So how did that impact your relationship?
It definitely took a turn. It was a big shock for us. It was a big, we didn't know what to do at the time.
Yeah. I mean, you guys were so new into sort of like an official relationship that sounds like very challenging.
We were both very young. I was 19 at the time, turning 20. I would have turned 20 a couple of months later, and he was only 21. So very young, fresh in the Navy. I didn't have a car at the time. We didn't own a house. I was living in the barracks. So it was very much a loop for us.
So what did you guys do to sort of keep your relationship strong and survive all of that? I mean, you guys had a lot maybe going on, like the deployment, the night school, the like starting off your career. Now there's a pregnancy.
We spent as much time as we possibly could together. I went back home. I got a car, went up there and spent time with him. Still trying, we tried to learn more about each other and get as close as possible as we could possibly get, as two people could possibly get with each other.
Yeah.
And we fought really hard to make this work because we both grew up in very broken homes, and we didn't want to repeat that cycle. We were hanging out one night, and I rolled over and I was like, we should get married. And he was like, okay. We went the next day and we were married.
Yeah. So you basically proposed. I love that.
I did. I definitely did.
Earlier on when we first started this interview, and you said that you were kind of the one to initiate going on a date. In my mind, I was thinking, yeah, she's this like strong, independent woman who's gonna go be assertive and ask the guy out, which is so hard for women to do. And not only did you do that, but you're the one who proposed. I just think that's so wonderful.
Yeah, it was crazy. We got married August 25th. It was a Friday. It was raining. We went to the courthouse. And within an hour, we were married. And I was like, cool.
Yeah.
Now what?
Yeah. Goes by really fast, doesn't it? Yeah, we got married at the courthouse too. And I was like in and out. And I was like, oh, man, that was fast. Now I'm married.
I don't know what to do now. We decided to keep our marriage a secret.
Okay.
Because we didn't know how people would react to us only dating like a couple months, being pregnant, and now married. We didn't want the stigma to be put against us. That fresh in the Navy, married, the divorce rate. We're like, we didn't want that.
I can really understand that. There's a lot of judgment.
Yeah.
I think with all maybe especially military relationships, but I see it in the civilian world too. Like people can get very judgmental of other people's relationships.
Yeah.
Like you've been dating too long and you need to hurry up and get married, or things like, why aren't you married yet? Or you're getting married too soon, or there's just so many.
Yeah, there's just so much stuff put against you.
Yeah. So I can really understand that nervousness. So what happened? Because I think you said you guys have 2 kids now, and it's been longer. So how did you guys finally, in a way, come out to everybody and be like, "Hey, we're married"?
A few months before I gave birth to our first daughter, I had accidentally called him my husband on a phone call with my sister and my birth mom, and that's when they found out, and I was like, look, you got to keep this secret. I was like, I will literally not talk to any of you ever again if you let this out. I was like, this is my secret. I was like, it's not something for you to tell. It's my thing to tell. So they kept the secret, and then one day I made my birth mom mad, and she messaged my dad and my stepmom and was like, hey, just so you know, Alyssa and Zach have been married for a year now.
Okay, so it wasn't really your choice.
I had told them. She told them. Oh yeah, I told her months before I found out after I gave birth, and then she told them. She was about 5 months old at the time when she told my parents, and I was like,
Gotcha.
"Are you serious?" So, year being married, it finally came out that we had been married, and at the time we were planning this wedding so that we didn't have to tell people, hey, we've been married for this long.
Yeah.
So.
Which is very common in the military, I think, for people to get married at the courthouse and then to have a wedding ceremony or reception later on. I know so many couples, we did that ourselves.
So yeah, that was our, everyone found out, and it was very dramatic, but my parents, they accepted it, and they were like, we understand. As long as y'all are happy, we don't really care. And I was like, okay, cool.
Good. Parents for the win there.
Yeah.
I'm glad they came back around. So you guys had quite the journey, I would say. And I think it's pretty inspiring. A lot of people worry about being like getting married too young or getting married too soon, or should we get married if we have kids, should we keep kids? And what I really love about your story is that you both were really reflective of you guys kind of decided we do want the kid, and that you were reflective about what were our types of growing up experiences, and you made a very intentional choice. Like, we want to raise our daughter, is
yes,
that
daughter.
Right? Yeah. We want to raise our daughter, and we want this type of family, and we want to have a very different experience. And you guys made like a very conscious choice and committed to that outcome. So I'm sure that other people listening to this, because I'm thinking about it too, so I'm thinking other people must be thinking about it who might be listening. You guys are dual military. What are the biggest challenges that you guys have faced with both of you being in the military?
Oh, jeez. It's very competitive between me and him with certain things that we do.
Like, who can do the most push-ups, or what?
Mostly when it comes to like exams and stuff.
Okay.
So he was a push button, which means like right after boot camp, he made automatic E4. So I was like, it's fine. I'm fine with it. You're third class. It's fine. So it came to me taking the exam for the first time, and I made it first up. So I was like,
Yeah, okay, so it's like who does better on exams and promotions and things like that. Gotcha.
He's 100%, 1,000% smarter than me, and I will give him that.
Yeah, that's very sweet of you to say. I'm sure if he listens to this, he's going to appreciate that.
Yeah. He's a major nerd. I love him to death, but he really is, and it's adorable. I love it. He's trying to teach, when he comes back, he wants to teach our oldest all about computers and everything. He wants to build her own computer and all of that stuff. And I'm like, go for it. it's all you.
Yeah. So there's been the competitiveness. Any other struggles from being dual military?
He doesn't. He kind of fits in everywhere because he's a man.
Mm-hmm.
So when we hang out with our military friends, it's mostly just males. So he can hang out with them and it'd be just fine. It's socially acceptable.
Yeah.
In the military. With me, I work in a man's world, pretty much. That's what it's called, a man's world in the military. So I don't really fit in with some of them. Well, I connect with the men because I work with what they're doing.
Yeah, you have the same type of job. Yeah. You're doing the same thing. Everybody kind of connects with their coworkers because you really can relate. Yeah.
But if they're married, the wives don't really, or girlfriends don't really see it that way because of the stigmatism of the boat hoe or boat boo.
That people form connections while they're on deployment. Yes. Sometimes that leads to affairs.
Yes. And that's led to this kind of wall with some of the women on his ship because I connect. And I have like three women on the Navy wives that I really connect with because they understand that just because I connect with them doesn't mean I want them.
Yeah.
And that's what I try to explain with people, but they don't really see it that way.
Yeah, you can have very close friendships without it transitioning into something romantic or sexual.
Exactly. It's kind of affected me in a way, but he doesn't truly understand why. Because he
doesn't get it. That makes so much sense to me. Everybody needs to have like a tribe, I guess, a way to connect with other people to get emotional support. And usually we need to get emotional support from the people who understand what we're going through.
Mm-hmm. And it's difficult sometimes because like some of the wives, they try and understand what I'm going through.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, they really don't because they don't see it from my aspect of being active duty, knowing what's going on, knowing pretty much because I make the ship schedules. That's my job in the military.
Yeah.
So I know what's going on with the ship 24/7, and they don't really understand why I act a certain way or why I tend to disagree with certain things. That's kind of a difficulty for me is I need to be more compassionate, I guess.
Like kind of trying to understand that they don't get it. They don't see the same things that you see. They don't have the same understanding or the same context about what all is going on that you have, given your job and being actually in the military, dealing with the same things that their spouses are. That makes a lot of sense to me. So we're getting close to running out of time. So I'm trying to think maybe like if there were other dual military couples, because I think that is part of what makes your guys' story so unique, is that you both are in the military, and the fact that you like met really young and you had sort of an unexpected pregnancy and you made this very conscious choice. We are going to do what is needed to make this be the best family we can have, or like tips maybe, or even things you wish you had known before becoming a dual military couple, that you would want to make sure other people were aware of or knew.
Communication is key. That's with any relationship.
100% agree. Yeah.
Don't let your commands bully you at all. If you want to get married, get married. It's not up to anyone else besides you two. If you decide not to change your last name in the military, that's perfectly okay. I didn't do it because I wanted to be my own person in the military, and my husband understood that. We actually plan on, once I get out, changing my last name then. It's just, in the military, it's hard to be your own person, especially when you're literally owned by the military.
Yeah.
So if you want to have that little bit of yourself, it's perfectly okay. Don't let anyone judge you for keeping your last name.
I love that. I kept my last name too. I realize I'm not in the military. My spouse is in the military, but I can really relate to that because I got some pushback about why I wasn't changing my name too.
It's hard trying to find, especially once you have, because when you have a husband, you give your all to him. Like, I've birthed his kids. I changed my whole life for him. It's hard once you become a mom and a wife to find something that's still yours.
Yeah.
And
so you got to hold on to them.
My dad never had sons, so my last name was the last little bit of his line that I had left.
Yeah. I can relate to that too. That's the same thing. I don't have any brothers, so great. Well, before we end, do you have any questions for me or last thoughts?
You had answered my first question of how you got into this. You wanted to see everyone so they can see the aspect of the military, from personalities.
I think I answered that before we started recording. So I might actually jump in for the audience because they didn't hear that part of our conversation. But Alyssa had asked about why I was starting this podcast. And I come from a military family. Both my parents were Navy. So they were also a dual military couple. Now I'm a military spouse. My husband's in the Navy. And all of my work experience, I think that really came from like my family. We have so many generations of Navy that I wanted to really work with Navy families. And at first, I worked for the Veterans Affairs Clinic. So actually most of my work experience up until recently has been with veterans. And I'm pretty glad that I started with them first, actually, because I really got to see the impact that military had on them afterwards, after leaving the military. And now I'm even more motivated than I was before to help families who are in the military really have like close relationships and that strong connection, because that I think is a big, a protective factor, something that helps prevent, I think, a lot of the problems that veterans are facing after retirement or after they leave the military. And so part of this podcast was the goal just for people to have information about how to have healthy relationships, because I know I never got that information when I was a kid, and really be able to reach a broader audience.
That's amazing.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. So any other questions I could answer for you before we end?
No, that's it.
Okay, well, Alyssa, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your story. I have so much respect for you now, hearing like the full depth. I mean, I was so grateful that you were willing to talk on this podcast. But even now afterwards, and I'm thinking about like how you guys fought to have the relationship that you want and to have a family that's going to be a good role model for your kids, and the fact that you are just a go-getter with the being the one to initiate things. Mad respect. So thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, please take a second to go rate, review, and subscribe so you get all of our future episodes. Make sure to check out the show notes to sign up for our free 10-week relationship email course. This email course is really designed for people who are maybe having trouble with communication or connection in their relationship, and helping them develop some quick wins right away to start improving it. While I am a therapist, this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not considered therapy. And it should also not be a replacement for therapy. If you think you need a professional of any kind, you should definitely go find one. Until next time.